Welcome to another DragonLance Saga review episode. It is Kirinor Frostcult III. My name is Adam, and today I'm going to give you my review of The Search for Magic, edited by Margaret, Weis and Tracy Hickman. I would like to take a moment and thank the DL Saga members and Patreon patrons, and invite you to consider becoming a member or patron. You can even pick up Dragonlance Media using my affiliate links in the description below. Now, this is my perspective only. If yours differs, that's okay. Share your thoughts in the live chat if you're joining live, or in comments after the fact. And we can have a bit of a back and forth. It'll be fun. All right, so this is pre-written short synopses / reviews of each of the stories. There's a lot of them, so strap in because we have some mileage ahead of us. Chris, how you doing, man? Can we talk about the cover art of this book, the best you've seen in the 5th Age era of Dragonlance? This whole trilogy, I think, is just beautiful artwork. This one is done by Matt Stawicki, which, you know, he's great. Some of his work is better than others, but I think this series, this trilogy specifically, is some of the best art we got. So I totally agree with you. Giggles the Clown, how you doing, man? I bet it's cold up there. All right, let's dive in. The first story is called All for a Pint by Brian Murphy. Now, this was a delightful tale about two mages, former white and red robes respectively, who decided to make a profit and improve the nature of the... I'm sorry. Who decided... I put profile for some reason. I don't know. They decided to make beer and improve the nature of those who consumed it by casting a spell on it. Now, this spell is meant to improve one's disposition, but they had to test various strengths of the spell in order to get it right. One had minotaurs tickle fighting each other. No kidding. Another had a man mooning them as he's running out of the street, which was hilarious. So they're walking down the street. This guy stumbles out of the bar, sees the two wizards. He's like, "Hey, can you get any power from this moon?" Or something to that effect. And he like drops his pants. Just hilarious. They finally perfected this spell, and it was stolen from them that night. They chased who they believed stole it, and it led them to a warehouse where the thief talked with a black-robed wizard and then entered the warehouse. The two wizards and their apprentice went into a nearby tavern and had a few pints before bursting into the door, but the beer they were drinking was their own. They felt wonderful, and after kissing the barmaid, they left ready to break down the warehouse door. As they charged the door, the wizard inside opened it, causing them to run and roll into the warehouse. The old wizard ended up being their former master, and he scolded them for using the remaining magic to affect beer. To punish them, he cast a spell over Planthus as well, and the entire city had a full day of peace, happiness, and brotherly love. The two mages seemed to learn their lesson, and that was the story. It reminded me of an old short story from the original Tales collection where a Kender puts a love potion in Odic's ale and ends up in a love fest in the Inn of the Last Home. It was a nice entry into this collection. The next story is called The End by Nancy Varian Berberick. This is about the final days of Quillinesty. It's focused on a librarian's assistant, Jai, who has spent his young career reading and cataloging the histories of the Quillinesty nation. His master, librarian Annalise, sees Jai as the best of her assistants. He leaves one night for dinner when his father tells him that they must leave Quillinost. The relatives are dying, and they should all travel to them. In truth, he's part of the resistance, and the Dark Knights are closing in to capture him, so he arranged this trip. Jai doesn't want to go, but he sees no option of staying because he would be caught, tortured, and killed. He returns to his library and tells Annalise where he's going, but that he will be back. When they leave that night, they're stopped as a Dark Knight is waiting on the road. They're teleported and wake in a dwarven tunnel where Stanok Hammerfell greets Jai and leads him down the tunnel towards Thorbarton. He's alone and he doesn't know where everyone else is. Stanok tells him that they are with the dwarves and explains that the tunnels were the idea of the Thane and Gilthaz. Quellenost is going to fall sooner or later, and the people need safe passage out of the city and the nation as a whole. Jai doesn't care and insists on leaving to record the end of Quellenost. Eventually, Stanek relents and lets the young elf go. As they are nearing the exit of the tunnel, Annalise's voice is heard directing Dark Knights. It turns out that she bargained for the safety of the library and gave up the plan of the elves leaving and the tunnels under Quillinesty. Stanek and Jai fight them, capture Annalise, and Stanek says that he will wait for Jai. Jai ends up heading home, and it reminds me of like World War II, when Nazi Germany was rounding up Jews, gays, blacks, and anyone they deemed weak. That is what the Dark Knights represent. And while going back to Quailinos to witness its end sounds like the height of foolishness, I can understand one's passion for their home and wanting to be there even as the world falls apart. It reminds me also of that great old 80s flick. Patrick Swayze. This is going to kill me. I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, Russia invades U.S., and these boys have to go up and live in the mountains. And they sort of have this group name of the Wolverines after their school's mascot. I can't remember the name of it to save my... Oh, I watched it. Red Dawn. Thank you, Corey. Jeez, that was quick. Great film. It still holds up in my opinion anyway. I mean, I was a kid when it came out, but I still loved it. Anyway, it kind of reminds me of that too. They never left. They just stayed in the mountains and then went back into the town to try to liberate their parents from the Russian concentration camps, basically. Really cool story. But I love the idea that they don't want to just abandon Quailinos. Like, if your job is to record and preserve history, then why would you ever, even in the most tumultuous of times, want to be out of that region? Like, you want to be there to see the fall so you can write about it for future posterity. So I dig it. All right, the next story is called The Lost Sea by Linda P. Baker. I'm torn about this story. For one, it's written really well. But for another, I don't like the main character at all. Now, this is about Captain Ephraim. He lives in Tarsus and he's built a boat. Tarsus has been landlocked since the cataclysm, so he's ridiculed by everyone in town for building a ship. The children come and taunt and tease him, and he runs them off, further ruining his reputation among the townsfolk. Then one day, a storm actually comes, and it keeps raining. And only Ephraim wore appropriate clothing for a rainstorm and was mocked for it. Then the water began to build up on the ground, and soon his ship began to float. He took it out in his massive blinding night storm and was nearly swept out to sea, but managed to turn it back towards Tarsus to see people climbing the ships in the old bay that were repurposed for homes, trying to survive the weather and oncoming seawater. They leapt down toward Ephraim's ship, and slowly, reluctantly, he turned to bring more people onto his ship. Even as there were more to save, he raced to the boat to the dock, and in the massive storm told them all to get out. When he turned back to the sea, he saw a woman leap into the ocean screaming for help, but he turned away from her and sailed out into the sea. The character who wanted to be respected and appreciated by the townsfolk didn't even want to save them, and then abandoned others. His cruelty in their fate was less human and more monstrous, something I didn't enjoy reading at all. The strength of our species is that when push comes to shove, regardless of any other factor, we help one another. Survival is built into our DNA. It is the aberrant among us that would turn away and walk away from someone facing death when you could save them. Yet Ephraim did just that. The people jibing him did not equal a justified death, and it really, really bothered me. All right. The next short story is called Some Assembly Required by Nick Donohoe. The story begins with a gnome named Sorter working in the Great Repository, sorting thousands of volumes of gnomish manuals. It showcases a typical day in Mount Nevermind for gnomes and leads to a kender named Franny asking a series of questions to Sorter about the books. Later, there's a book avalanche, and they're afraid the kender was under them, but after cleaning it up, they saw no kender, but a few books were missing. So Sorter decided he would go after the kender. He packed traveling clothes and headed out to the closest town, with smoke ascending to the sky. A warehouse was burning down, and children who were working the warehouse were having a grand old time. They said a kender came by and burned the warehouse down. The elders told him that the Kender left toward the neighboring town and that the Kender should stay there. The gnome went on to the next town, which was covered in mud. His children were also enjoying the destroyed warehouse. Apparently, there's a fierce trade competition, so all these villages suggest visiting the next village to recreate the destruction that they themselves experienced. The gnome continued on to find the Kender in the third village, constructing a siege machine. The gnome ended up helping him, and it summarily destroyed the town, as all gnome inventions are prone to do. The town leadership paid them to go to the next few towns and create some machines for them, and off the gnome and Kender went with an idea for a massive ceramic knife machine. It was a silly story that illustrated the dire consequences of gnomish technology and the curiosity and free-spiritedness of Kender and the wildly dangerous combination of them both together. The next short story is called Go with the Flow by Paul B. Thompson. This was a fun story about two snake oil salesmen who regularly conned people and were caught in a con by a ship captain and marooned on the ice wall. Destined to die there, with the cold nearly doing the task, they were awoken by the terrible and loud sound of gnomish machinery. The gnomes took them aboard their great ice-cutting wheels and entered Nevermind South, a temporary camp where the gnomes could cut miles of glacier ice and transport it to Sancrest. Stunned by the audacity of the gnomes, but happy to be alive, the two men go with the gnomes. They end up breaking the miles-sized glacier off and using the wheel machines to paddle it north. As they pass N-Star, pirates come about and try to rob them, but the gnomes have no treasure, only tools, and the two conmen have nothing of value. Frustrated, the pirate captain decides to kill the two, but a cyclone is building off the coast and it hits suddenly. The iceberg is dashed to the shore of N-Star and breaks into pieces, ruining the gnomes' plans. But, industrious as ever, they get back to work, collecting gear and coming up with new plans. The con men approach the town, talking about the ice that's on the shore, and sell it, and they convince the people to pay for the ice. Then they decide to help the gnomes and make a living selling ice across Ansalon. Again, just a silly and fun story that was way more entertaining than I expected it to be. The next short story is called The Great Gully Dwarf Climacteric of 40 SC by Jeff Crook. The story begins with two Kender running from a mob. They break into the gnomish district and burst into a gnome's home where he was staying late. The gnome, Dr. Palaver, is asked to cure Morgrafy's cousin, Whortleberry. He's an afflicted Kender, and it seems to have come up upon him very recently in a tunnel under Palanthus filled with gully dwarfs. The gnome said that he can cure his cousin, but they need to face the fear that caused the affliction. They must return to the sewers post-haste. The Kender and the gnome all head to the sewer. They eventually discover gully dwarves and a massive hole that was supposed to be scary, but it just contained another gully dwarf from the Bulp clan, rather than the Gulps from earlier. He led them to the scariest place he knew of, a shadow dragon. The dragon had been making the agar make smoke for it to consume, or it would consume the agar. It breathed its terrifying smoke, blinding and disorienting everyone, and the Kender quickly had Wart drink the heroic potion that the Dr. Gnome said would cure his fright. He drank it, and sunbeams and rainbows and spring flowers sprang from every orifice of his body, forcing the dragon back into its lair. He began taunting it, finally able to speak, and his fear subsided. He dragged the gnome and Mordrify, or whatever the name was, to the surface, but the spring-scented flowers were too much for the agar, and they all fled in mass into the city, killing pets, one homeless guy, before running off into the docks, sinking ships and killing themselves and some fish. It was a massive cacophony, and in the end, Wart brought the gnome doctor and his uncle to another gnome doctor to cure their blindness. This was yet another silly story, but I'm now thinking this whole collection is just about Kender, gully dwarves, and gnomes. The next short story is called Bond by Kevin T. Stein. This is a disjointed tale that is a sequel to an even more disjointed tale about the Wolfbunde. Apparently, in the Age of Might, the Dark Queen gave power to men who followed Canis and could form bonds with wolves. In the aftermath of the Chaos War, they hunted the agents of chaos. The previous story has a Wolfbunde kill his wolf rather than seem consumed by chaos, and he became the Forgotten. Though in that story, he was condemned to the abyss, if memory serves. Now, he's out and terrorizing the land around the Lords of Doom. The 5 scout Wolfbunde are now hunting him, though he is incredibly powerful. We're presented with Karn, a scout, and his wolf, Blood. They have an uneasy relationship, and he actually beats the wolf, which bugs the shit out of me. If you share a bond with something, you don't physically assault or abuse that something. Period. And in general, violence against animals is verboten for most people. So they go about after the Forgotten, have a bunch of awkward moments between Blood and Karn that I don't fully understand, as the writing is not much better than the last short story, and Blood ends up breathing in the Forgotten's face, making him kind of go crazy, then start crying. I imagine for the absence of his wolf. And Karn reflects that the dark cannot break the bond between a man and his wolf. This could have all been so much better if there were more clear in the writing and about what the hell it was going on. It was so frustrating. All right, the next short story is A Twist of the Knife by Jean Rabe. This was a wonderful short story about an assassin named Shiv that was hired by Dark Knights to find and eliminate a Salamnic knight that is healing plagued villagers around Naraka. The former knight, a woman named Risana, actually deserted the knights after they were ambushed by Dark Knights. She was thought to be killed and just walked away, decided to heal others rather than kill them. This, however, created a myth in the area about Salamnic knights and has some locals leaving to join them and turn against the Dark Knights. So Shiv was to be eliminated. Shiv was hired to eliminate her. He saw her tend wounded and saw that she truly cared about this, and it endeared her to him. They continued from village to village, traveling together, even fighting off assassins that were sent to kill her, thinking Shiv was dead or taking too long to do the job himself. He would fight for her at first because she was his mark, but later because he respected her. And in the end, he deserted his contract and swore to protect her until he died. I really loved that this old assassin could be touched by a woman who had a single-minded purpose, not for gods or oaths, but because it's what she was passionate about. I really enjoyed this story. Jean Rabe is really growing on me with all of these short stories of hers. Hunger by Richard A. Knack is the next short story. Oh man, this was fun. It's about the souls of the dead who were stealing magic from magical items and casters before the War of the Souls on behalf of Dekesis. A Bozak, 3 Baz were searching for magical artifacts for Sable, the Black Dragon Overlord, in a sunken ruined city of Krolis. The Baz were excavating the site as the Bozak was dreaming of finding items of power that he could leave Sable's service with. He tries to emulate the Aurak Draconians he has admired and relished his ability to cast spells, even though they had been failing recently. The Bozak returns with knowledge of a cavern, and Brutus, the Baz return, and Brutus the Bozak goes to investigate. He finds a bracelet of Chemish with 2 black gems. It allows him to see undead ghosts that are all around him begging for power. Over the next few days, it drives him near insane. Whenever he tries to cast a spell to banish or dispel the undead, they take the power, ruining the spell. He orders the Baz to throw the gems away that were in the bracelet, and it makes him unable to see the ghosts. But he can still imagine them and feel them. How oh so many of them were around him, pleading. He chases the gems down and drowns. The Baz return to Sable and deliver the bracelet, and Sable is pleased but cannot see the horde of spirits around her taking her magic as well as the bracelets. It's so wonderfully creepy to think of the undead spirits stealing your essence and that of all your items. It's such a cool setup for the War of Souls, and Knack did a great job with this story. Product given for services rendered by Don Perrin is the next one. This was a wonderful tale about 2 brothers who turned in their parents, who were clerics of Paladine, to the Knights of Dekesis and came upon an old man in robes and a dwarf. They were burying the dead and taking their weapons and armor. They offered to share their supper with the brothers and told them that they commended the souls of the dead to the gods and in return took the swords and armors and melted them into steel pieces for the banks of Palanthas. They wanted to do the same for the Knights of Tikhisis, but they didn't know the burial rites. The brothers pulled weapons on them and started to rob them, but the old man offered to split the money with them if they helped by telling him how to commend the souls to Tikhisis. The brothers flippantly told him, and then the priest did it to them, and they dropped dead. It turned out that they were skeletons, and the old man was trying to destroy them and take their armor. Once he learned the rite, he could do the same to others. Such an interesting twist and tale about the aftermath of battle and the creation of steel as a currency. All right, Dragon's Throat by Donald Bingle. This is the last story. This was an interesting tale about the ice wall glacier being the primary character and everything else secondary. So the glacier grows north and then melts south, revealing objects that were left in the ice from wars or travelers who never made it across. This ends up being a pilgrimage site of sorts for Kender, but in the Age of Mortals, dark knights also would travel the area in the southern Plains of Dust. One day, a Kender named Finder-Keeper Rumbleton, passed through and found a strangely shaped object, instantly claiming it as Iredom magic. This sent the other Kender into a frenzy of questions and nearby dark knights demanding the object. They chased the Kender across the glacier till he believed he had lost them, and stumbled across the ice nomad and his son, who were hunting woolly mammoths. They helped the Kender for the night, then when the dark knights showed up again, helped him run from them. They led them into a valley that would flood periodically, and one of the sons went to help it along as the dark knights were camping in the valley during their pursuit. It flooded the valley, consuming the sun as well, but the Dark Knight commander escaped and continued pursuit, eventually catching up to the Kender and nomads. They fought as best as they could, but the Dark Knight overwhelmed the nomads, killing them, but eventually got stuck in some mud and freezing to death as he was trying to cut off his own legs to get out. This was all relayed to the nomad clan by a bard who was the Kender. It's more of an environmental tale of the natural disasters of a living glacier, and I, for one, really enjoyed that approach of a story. All in all, this was an interesting collection with a few really good stories. If you're a Dragonlance fan, I would recommend you taking time to read this anthology. All right, so what do you guys think? Thanks for tuning in, Corey. Appreciate it. Let's see, first mooning in Dragonlance history. I think it was the first mooning, and it was so funny. Just this drunk guy dropping drawer. So great. The end was great. I always loved the story beat of Thorbarden helping the elves reminiscent of the Sword Sheath scrolls. And I really liked the idea of that massive tunnel with the huge worms that ate rocks. Reminded me of Doom, actually. I'm sorry, Dune, not Doom, the movie, video game. Let's see. A great message in the end that material things aren't worth surrendering your morals for. Yeah. The Lost Sea answered an untold idea you often thought about. What if the sea returned to Tarsus? I just wanted more. What dragon caused a storm? What happened to him? Yeah, it presented it as if this was known lore about the sea returning to Tarsus. And for the life of me, I cannot remember that ever happening in any story ever before this. And so I'm racking my brain trying to think, has that ever been mentioned before? And I don't mind like one aberrant storm that causes the sea to flood into Tarsus. I think that's fine. But the way it was presented in the introduction by Margaret Weis sort of inferred that it was like a known thing that happens. The gnomes have been featured quite a bit in these anthologies, especially this one, but yeah, a lot. You wonder if there was a thought the writers had that the Age of Mortals would lean more towards technology as time moved forward. Well, it did cause the gnome, the mad gnomes, which were the thinker gnomes, which were effective at making technology. So just like the Kender split in the Fifth Age from being afflicted Kender because of the atrocities committed to them by Malastrix, gnomes ended up being successful a lot. And up in Taladas, they had basically thinker gnomes. They were they had a different name for them. I can't think of it right now. But and that was always a thing where they were actually effective at creating inventions in Taladas. But in Ansalon, it was always just tinkering and everything just blows up in your face until the 5th age. So I wonder if they were like, hey, this is a new playground to play in. Let's play with, what if these inventions worked? You really like the gnome story of transporting miles of ice to Mount Nevermind. The funniest part is that none of them knew why they were doing it. Yeah. Very gnomish not to know the exact reason. The antidote to the afflicted Kender was a potion. Maybe it was just dwarf spirits, liquid courage. Yeah, well, the way they described like all the light and rainbows and smelling flowers exiting every orifice of his body inferred that it wasn't just dwarven spirits, and it literally drove the shadow dragon back into its lair away from the gnome, or the Kender, I mean. So it had to be something pretty potent, but it was just a stupid, silly story, The wolf story was the only one in the collection that you didn't like. A fun collection in the anthology, though lacking the hard-hitting, darker stories. Those wolf stories, I feel like they could be so much better, but they're both written so choppy and all over the place. They just don't do a very good job of setting the situation. And I mean, on the face of it, okay, there's a group that can bond with their wolf, and that's it. But who's Canis? Like they said, it was like the gift of Canis. If you followed Canis, I've never heard of a Canis before in my life. And then, except for these two stories. And then this whole idea of the forgotten, like if they were inferring, which I thought they were, that it was the previous short stories, Wolfbunde, then he was in the abyss after having killed his wolf rather than letting him be consumed by chaos. So it didn't make sense that he would come back, because the whole premise of that first short story was that he would rather face eternity in the abyss than have his wolf succumb to chaos. So he was sacrificing himself ostensibly. I don't know. The whole thing is weird. The assassin story was great, switching from intending to kill to love. Your wife goes back and forth with this. The Knack story was a great lead into the War of Souls. Yeah, definitely. Product Given was your favorite of the anthology. Great twist ending. Did you ever think about writing your own short stories for DragonLance? Chris has already done so for the 40th anniversary celebration. No, I don't. I actually have other campaign worlds that I'm sort of developing stories for. There's so much already for Dragonlance that I figure I might as well just do my own thing rather than playing in this world, with writing. So no, not really. Corey, you never got a chance to read this book. Sounds great for short stories. It's pretty good. Again, very Kender and Gnome forward. A little bit of dusting of Gully Dwarves. But there's other anthologies with a lot better stories and a lot more of them. But this was good. So if you are sort of a completionist or just a fan, then yeah, definitely check it out. It's worth it. All right, that is it for my review of The Search for Magic, edited by Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman. What did you think of the anthology? Did you connect with any of these stories? And finally, what is your favorite anthology in Dragonlance? Feel free to email me at info@dlsaga.com or leave a comment below. I'd like to thank creator patron Aaron Hardy and developer patron Chris Androu. I'd also like to take a moment and remind you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notified about upcoming videos, and click the like button. This all goes to help other Dragonlance fans learn about this channel and its content. And this channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the Dragonlance Saga. Thank you for joining the celebration. So, until next time, for Dragonlance Saga, my name is Adam Slonjavar.